Brittany.
Hello. How
I'm
are
so
you?
excited to talk to you today about calendars and the chaos that ensues when we try to abundantly fill our calendar with all of the things.
Hashtag all the things. That's a hashtag now, right? Hashtag all the things.
All of the things, right? So tell us who you are, what you do, and I'm so excited for you to wow us. I'm going to go and share some things on some, so that's why I'm going to look down, but feel free to tell us all the things.
Perfect. Can you see my screen? Is everything we good?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to dive into my days by design method and controlling this crazy calendar chaos because it is a real thing. So just a little bit about me. I am a podcaster. I'm also the Chief Efficiency Officer. That's my cool title.
I love that.
CEO of Brittany & Co. I also run the Productivity Pod community, and then the podcast is the Productivity Podcast. So I really just focus on helping those busy business owners build the business without burnout by implementing some task management, some client management, calendar management, right? In a really simple, easy way that actually frees up your time instead of giving you more things to do. So a little bit of just about kind of what we do. We really focus on task, client, time management systems. I dive a lot into Asana. That's my favorite. Client management, my favorite, 17 hats, and time management obviously is from a calendar standpoint, but really the whole focus is to help people work smarter, not harder, improve your processes, make you more efficient, and help you work less and make more, because that's what we all want to do, right?
Yes.
So I created this days by design method back at the beginning of this year, and it kind of has these 3 different pieces. And I think that some of this is missing. And I think a lot of people dive into the business side first and then try to cram lifestyle things in. And I think that's where burnout sets in. So really diving into designing your lifestyle first, and then allowing your business to fit within those kind of gaps that you have. And then really keeping track of some routines and stuff as well. What I see so many entrepreneurs doing is really filling their calendar with all the things, but not putting the recurring things on there. So like sales and marketing time, self-care time, like these things that also you want to be doing. And then you have to do that stuff on top of this full calendar. So that's where the burnout sets in, and really kind of diving through these 3 areas and how we can kind of be more proactive with that so that we can actually manage the chaos within our calendar. So okay, cool. So I'm just going to dive right in. I can take questions throughout. If you guys have them, I want to drop them, comment, chat, all of that good stuff. And then I can do those at the end. But really kind of diving into this lifestyle by design piece, right? Most of us didn't start a business to work 24/7.
We didn't?
No.
That's what I thought I was doing.
Yeah. I mean, what happens is most of us work more than like a 9-to-5 job, and we like go through this whole process of getting rid of this job to then work more than if we were just at the job.
I don't understand why we do that to ourselves. We are terrible bosses to ourselves. We would never ask our employees to do that, but we do it to ourselves.
1000%. So what I was seeing is that people in business, especially solopreneurs, kind of in that first 2 to 3 years of business, there is going to be hustle, right? Like there is going to be some stuff that you got to figure out. There's going to be some hustle, and there's going to be figuring stuff out. But it comes to a point that they are going to either burn themselves out by doing that, or they have to make changes. And what I really saw is when people started to kind of plan out how they wanted their lifestyle to be first, and then fit the business within that, that's when we got this really good balance. Now, the word balance is very like controversial, right? Because you can never have like a perfect work-life balance. Like there's always going to be this teeter-totter. And there's always seasons, right? Like if you're launching something, like that season's going to be a lot more intense than if you're not launching something. Summertime with children, like whole different ball game, right? I decided to keep my children home and get a puppy at the same time because I thought that was Really good idea. Yeah. While I was running a business and I was like, oh, that might not have been the best decision I made, but here we are.
Yeah.
But so balance is, it is really just having like time freedom, doing the things that you want, and having a really clear vision on like what that lifestyle looks like for you. Right. So, I break it down into 6 different areas, but really kind of like brainstorming what that is. Like, what does a perfect week look like for you, for business and for your life? But like on the life side, in the family side of things, financial, fitness, and I'm all about alliterations and things. So
girl, you are a business owner after my own heart. I love alliterations and all the acronyms and all the
acronyms.
Things.
Oh, I got all the acronyms. It's
all
a whole thing. So, but you want to start thinking about these different areas, right? And obviously I'm not the first one that's come up with this. There's wheels of life and all the things, right? But family, financial, fitness, fun, and really that fulfillment side of things, and friends, like all of these different areas there, it's going to take time commitments for you. And if you're not intentional with these things and putting them on the calendar, things are going to slip through the cracks, and you're not going to have that financial security that you have because you haven't planned for it. You're not going to be able to have family time because you didn't put it on the calendar, and then business takes over. You're not going to be able to have that personal development time because you're like, cool, I would love to read this book or listen to this podcast, but I need to do some client work. So really kind of just brainstorming that first and like saying, in an ideal world, what does my week look like? Because honestly, we're creatures of habit. If you look at your calendar week over week, it's pretty much the same. Like, to be honest, like there's a few differences here and there. And like, obviously if you go on vacation or something, it changes, but it really is the same. For me, like weekends is a lot of family time and catching up and laundry and getting ready for the week and like mapping stuff out. But like my weeks look the same for the most part. So really kind of brainstorming that is really the first step I tell people. And then creating a vision board. This is obviously kind of a like extra step, right? But I like to have a vision board on Pinterest of like, okay, in these 6 different areas, what are those things that I want? So for me in the family area, a lot of that is we are big board gamers. We have like literally 90 board games. It's kind of crazy. But what we were finding is we never played them, or it was very sporadic. So for me, I was like, why don't we just put weekly board game night on the calendar? Right? If it's on the calendar, it happens. Like, let's be real. If it's on the calendar, it happens, or I'm intentional about moving it and rescheduling it. But if it's not on the calendar, it's one of those things that just gets pushed to the bottom. So thinking about those different things that you want to do. Self-care, that's a huge one. I think entrepreneurs completely neglect is taking time for yourself, having spa days for women, doing things that fill you up so that you can help your clients. But again, if you're not putting these things on the calendar and planning for them, they're going to get pushed to the bottom of the list because business is going to take over. So,
right. I love what you're saying about that too, because it's very much like if your calendar is not in alignment with your goals, right? So if you're saying, I want all this time freedom, but you're not scheduling your calendar in a way that gives you that time freedom where you are going to the beach whenever the heck you want to, or whatever that is, then you're not really, it's like you can't fill your calendar with all this stuff and then say you want all this time freedom, because it's never going to happen. Because I love the idea of setting it up in advance. Like, this is what I want my life to look like, and build your calendar around that. And so I love that you are, making the things a priority for you that are important to you. So spending, playing board games. I love that. Like, this is a priority. This is important. And this is what being a business owner is all about, is that you get to have that flexibility, along with all those F's there, the flexibility to design the life that you want to live. I love this.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things for me last year. So last year I was like, I really want to have 3-day weekends, right? Like, I want to take Fridays off. I want to have Friday, Saturday, Sunday to just do what I want to do. Now, does that include work sometimes because I like what I do? Yes. But I wanted to have, like you said, that flexibility. So I kept saying it like all of last year. I was like, I want Fridays off. I want Fridays off. And every Friday rolled around and somebody was on my calendar, or something filled in, or somebody wanted to book something. And I was like, okay, sure, let's just do it. And we got to the end of the year and I had never taken Fridays off. And I'm like, this is dumb. Why am I doing this? So literally for this entire year, I went through and blocked out Friday from 8 to 5 the entire Friday, completely blocked it out on reoccurrence for the entire year of 2022. And guess what? I've had a lot of Fridays off. Now there's still times that I'm in control of it now and I can put people there if I want to, or if I feel like it works, or maybe I've got a lot of business stuff going on that week. Like for me right now, I'm going out of town, so I'm cramming everything in this week, right? But it gives you that flexibility because now you're in control of the calendar and you decide what goes there because you've blocked it out and no one else can get in there. So it really is just being intentional and, like, to your point, making sure it's in alignment with your goals. So for me, one of my goals was to be off on Fridays. So I made sure my calendar is in alignment with that goal versus continually saying it and then working every single Friday.
Right. Preach it, sister. Love that.
Yes. So really starting to kind of dive in. So brainstorming, kind of like getting this all out of your head, looking at these different areas and mapping out these goals. And this is kind of that part I feel like people have a handle on is like, okay, cool. I can brainstorm it and put it on a vision board and make it really pretty. And then it disappears and nothing happens with it. So we've got to attach action steps to it and we've got to attach the calendar pieces to it. So I kind of broke it down in these different areas. And for example, I was just talking about family board game night, right? Like that was one of the goals. So our action steps were to pick a day and to add it to the calendar every single week. I want to do baking with my kids because we love baking together. Again, you've got to pick a day and it needs to go on the calendar. Same thing with like moving your body and working out. Yes, that might be a routine, but why don't we just add it to the calendar and block that time out so nothing else can cover that time up? And then really just like even fulfillment stuff, like daily reading and podcasts, like how long does that actually take? I think we all take for granted, like how much time things take. Everything takes longer than it's supposed to. And then it's like this ripple effect and you're like, well, now it's midnight and I got nothing done today. So really kind of breaking these down and saying like, what are those action steps associated with that? One of the other things for me, I just found my biological dad about 5 years ago. So I have a whole other family, different story for a different day, but I wanted to be really intentional of like going out to dinner and hanging out, and we're all super busy. But for me, that was a goal and I had to put it on the calendar monthly. And guess what? We've done it ever since it's been a reoccurring thing. Now, have we had to reschedule sometimes? Yes. Have we had to move things? Yes. But because it's on the calendar and I'm intentional with it, that I have that intention of like, okay, we're going to move it to a different day versus it's going to go to the bottom of the task list and never be seen again.
Right.
So yeah, really just diving in and adding the action and putting it on the calendar for sure. Okay, cool. So yeah, thinking about the lifestyle. And I think it's so important that this happens first, right? Because this is the part that is this is why we're building the business. So why not put this stuff in first before we start filling in the business side of things? Okay. So then we dive into designing your business. And this very much so aligns with what your goals are. And it's going to be very different for every person, right? So success looks different for every single person. Success to you may be $100,000. Success to someone else may be $1 million. And those are two completely different businesses. So really knowing yourself and knowing what that is for you and brainstorming what that business looks like for you. Because I think it's really easy to get caught up in all the things you should be doing because everyone else is doing them.
Oh my God, the shoulds are awful.
There's so many of them. They're like, you should be doing this and you should create a course and you should run an ad. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's exhausting.
I rebel against the shoulds.
Yes. I'm a business minimalist. So I think less is more. I'm actually that in most of my life, except for board games, obviously. But I think that the least amount of strategies you can implement, the least amount of softwares that you can implement, the least amount of tools and all these different things, it's going to make your life so much easier. And it really does, again, going back to being intentional, it really allows you to be more intentional with the things you're doing instead of trying to fill up 17 buckets at one time and then nothing happens and then you get burned out. So, really diving in. And I know it's hard, especially as business owners, to think like 3 years far in advance, right? But I think it's important because I tell people that it's really hard to plan your day if you don't have a plan for the year. Because if you don't know what your goals are, you're kind of just doing stuff to do stuff.
Yeah. I actually like to also take it a step further and actually what's the end game? What's the exit strategy? Like, are you going to run this business until you retire? Are you going to sell it? Like and then create your goals around the exit strategy so that you, like, right now I'm building the Dream Team directory. My goal is not to keep it. My goal is to sell it. So I'm building it with that in mind so that I'm not doing stupid things that I can't fix later. Right. Yep. So knowing what you want from the beginning, like what is the big giant picture? I love that. And breaking it down into those yearly goals is really, really important.
Yeah. And it really is just everything in business is reverse engineering. I mean, in life too, right? It's like, what is the end goal and what are the steps I need to get there? And there's a lot of planning involved in that. And there's a lot of pivoting involved in that. I honestly think if entrepreneurs could like build those two muscles of planning and pivoting, like we'd all be good.
Yes.
Because it's having that end goal, making a plan when the plan doesn't work, or you have to take a shortcut or a detour, like pivot a little bit.
Yes.
But you're still headed in the right direction. I use the analogy of like going on a road trip, right? And just like taking all the turns and doing all these things. Sounds amazing. Probably not the best way to build a sustainable business. Now we're going to have to take shortcuts and detours and all these different things in business too, but at least we have this end destination in mind that we're still moving towards. So yeah. So really brainstorming, what does your business look like? What is success for you? What are those big picture goals? And then starting to break that down into the more like tangible, what we're doing for the year. Right. Because again, everything takes longer than we think it's going to. Every project or task that you have has so many pieces and parts associated. It's crazy. And what happens is we think we're going to do these projects during the week, but we haven't mapped out the time for it. And then we're doing extra work on top of all these other things we've already put on our calendar because we're not blocking out time. So I have an example here of all the pieces that could be created with one goal, right? So this is obviously just an example, but you want to create and launch a planner. You've got to do research and planning, which has a lot of pieces. You've got to create the structure, which has a lot of pieces. You've got to design it. You've got to create marketing for it and a plan. You've got to create the landing page, the payment page. Like you can see, right? Like this create and launch a planner has all of this stuff attached to it.
Yeah.
And if you're not dedicating a specific amount of time in your calendar to work on these things, and you're also doing 7 other goals at the same time, nothing's going to move forward. You're going to get stuck on all of it because you're going to just be all over the place. So making sure that you're taking the time and saying like, okay, during the month of August, I'm going to be working on this. And here's how I'm blocking out time in my weeks to do so. So I think this is the other big piece is that if you are trying to reach this version of success that someone else has, and you're trying to do all these things that someone else says you should be doing, it's going to start to overwhelm you because there's so much stuff going on that you're just not planning the time for. And then it's not things that are revenue generating that you're working on. And then, you know, the whole hustle trap, right? Okay. And then the third piece is routines. Again, going back to this calendar, right? Like this calendar for most people is the kind of like source of truth of like, this is my week. This is what's going on. This is what's happening. And when you go to it and you don't have routines like this built into your calendar, you're filling up your calendar and you still have to do this stuff. You're filling up your calendar and you still have to do the business stuff. So then it starts to become this crazy, like hamster wheel that you're in of always feeling super overwhelmed, always feeling like you're hustling, always feeling like it's like one thing to the next, there's no space. So by building routines into your calendar and adding buffer time and making sure your recurring meetings are built in automatically, making sure you've got time blocked out for your morning routine, your end of day routine, lunch. Oh my gosh, this is something that's so big for entrepreneurs, right? How many times have we booked meetings back to back to back to back to back, and then we didn't build lunch in, so like we just don't eat.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I've done that numerous times.
I have a 2-hour lunch every day in my calendar blocked off.
Yeah. But if you didn't block that off, somebody would fill it in.
Right. Exactly.
And even down to these routines tie into business and personal, right? Like self-care time, making sure that's blocked off monthly, making sure if you've got vacations or travel plans or business conferences that you block off time for that, but also time before it and after it to prepare and catch up. How many times have we said like, oh my gosh, I need a vacation from my vacation, right?
Yes.
So making sure that you're adding buffer time to that for travel delays, for getting ready, for like resetting when you come back. One of the biggest ones I see entrepreneurs not doing, which is like detrimental to business, is having marketing and sales time every single day blocked off in their calendar. And when you don't do that, you fill up your calendar and guess what? You either still have to market and do sales or you don't have people coming to you. So
right.
You still have to fit it in. So why not create it within that calendar from the get-go?
Right.
Same thing with admin time, right? If we don't block off time for admin time, personal development, all of these different routines that you really need to be thinking about. So all of that I just showed you, right? I am putting in here and putting it all together. And you can see how your white space starts to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink some more. This is why this is so, so important, because if you don't do this, your calendar will take over and it will control you. And then you won't be doing those self-care activities. You won't be having that family time. You will be sucked into your business and you'll get stuck in this hustle phase where you don't have time for yourself and you're just overwhelmed constantly. So even just looking at this, like blocking off that time for the morning routine. Now, granted, my calendar is blocked off. Like no one could book with me at 6 a.m. anyways, but having it there makes me be really intentional with making sure that I get those things into my morning routine. Dropping the kids off. A lot of times people don't put drive time in and you don't think about it, right? Like driving to and from, dropping kids off and getting ready and getting to your computer. Like you need to block off that time so that you make sure that people aren't booking within it, but also so that you've got that buffer of time ready to go before you get started with your day. This is the big one with sales and marketing. I put at least an hour, sometimes 2 hours on my calendar for sales and marketing. And this is just either creating content, doing follow-ups within my CRM, sending emails to people, checking in on leads, like all of that kind of stuff. But if I didn't put that time in and I got busy with my day and I forgot to do my sales follow-ups, I'm not going to have clients coming in. So again, very intentional and very specific there. Time for admin, time for personal development. One of the big things for me, I realized that one of my goals was to do VIP days. And I knew myself that I couldn't do them back to back. So I can't do like a Tuesday and a Wednesday. I've got to have a day between because it's a 4-hour session. But what I was finding is I didn't block that time out. So then people would book in those time slots. And then I'm like, well, crap, I don't have a place to put my VIP day now. And now it's a Wednesday on top of a Thursday. And like, I know myself. Yeah. I can't do that. Right. And that was super hard. So I literally went through my calendar and blocked out every Tuesday and Thursday from 10 to 2 through the entire year. Yes. Because now I have those days available. And they align with my goals of how many VIP days I need for business to hit my revenue goals. So by doing this, you can now see everything I want to do from my lifestyle, everything I have routines for, everything I want to do in business. I have very little white space to say, I also want to add a new product. I also want to launch. I also want to create a new website. Like you start to see that you can't take on all these things that we try to take on.
Yeah.
So, that is, and I don't know what time it is. We're probably still pretty early, but I wanted to leave it up for questions because I know that this is like super generic. And I know people have some very specific questions when it comes to like their calendar and how to manage this and things like that. And I can obviously give some other tips around this as well. Did anything come in the chat or in the comments while we were,
Let me check. One of the questions that one of the biggest things that I always struggle with is actually following through with so like we have the best intentions, right? We set up a calendar, how we want it to go. And then the activity shows up on our calendar and it is hard for me to stop what I'm doing to go do the activity that I want my future self wanted me to do. Yeah. Right? I'm like, how do I honor my future self? Like it is so incredibly hard to actually follow through with the calendar that you've designed for yourself. So do you have any tips or recommendations on that?
Yeah. So it really, I mean, it comes down to habit building, right? So this isn't something that just happens overnight. I try to say too, like, I batch my days based on like a theme. So I actually use, acronyms and all the things. BCO stands for Business Development, Client Services, and Operations, because I feel that every business has those three areas. So I time block in that way to a degree as well. So like when I say sales and marketing time, that's really like anything business development related. I try not to put really specific time blocks on my calendar unless it's for something like lunch or something is very specific, obviously, right? But trying to keep it a little bit more broad so that you have that flexibility to say like, okay, cool, it's business development time right now, or sales and marketing, right? I can go in and do whatever activities are associated. So a lot of it is discipline and habits, which are kind of hard to build. But I think the more you see how efficient it helps you be, the more you want to do it. So if you can like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're like, okay, cool. It's sales time. Let's do this and do it. You're going to see benefits from it. But I would say trying to add more time than you think it's going to take when you're time blocking and just getting started with that too, because again, getting into that habit of like, what does this look like? Now I have a really streamlined sales process for like follow-ups in my CRM. So for me, an hour, I can knock out so much stuff. Yeah. So it also kind of depends on what systems you have in place and things like that. But it is habit building for sure, which is everybody wants the magic bullet of like, how do I do it?
Yeah. How do you handle, the unexpected, a doctor's appointment, your kid gets sick at school, you need to go pick them up. I mean, there's going to always be things that are going to unexpectedly pop up. So what do you do for that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that once you get into this habit and once you have like a weekly planning where you can really lay out your week, you just become more proactive. So you can stay ahead of timelines a little bit better. So until you can get to that place, obviously it's this like game of shuffling things when stuff like that comes up. But again, right, like I build in that whole Friday as buffer time for me. So if something comes up through the week and stuff has to get shifted, I can use that buffer time for doing those activities. Now, again, I want to take Fridays off, or at least have half of Friday off, right? So I don't want to continue to make that a habit of like constantly putting stuff in there. But I think it all comes back to what I said, like those two muscles of planning and pivoting, like plan for your week. And then when stuff comes up, we've got to pivot a little bit. But the more you stay in that flow of planning and pivoting, the easier it becomes because you're more proactive against stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So someone who has never time blocked before, which is not me, but for someone who is like just getting started with this idea, what do you think is the first step they need to take?
Yeah. So I think just kind of looking at, I would look at your calendar, honestly, for the past few weeks. Cause again, we're creatures of habit. So like our calendars are pretty similar. So from an appointment standpoint or anything that you just put on your calendar in general, I would kind of just look back and try to find patterns. I would look back and say like, oh, I take a lot of client calls on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, but not necessarily on Mondays and Fridays. I'm doing a lot of meetings on these specific days, or I have a lot of personal stuff on a Tuesday, right? I color code my calendar too, like my actual calendar. Yes. Everything business is blue. Everything personal is purple. So for me, I can visually see if it's a really heavy personal day, like I'm not going to schedule business stuff because it's it's going to be a home and personal and whatever. But I would just look at your calendar for the past few weeks or months and just kind of try to start finding those patterns and seeing like, okay, this continually happens to be client days on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. Let's block that time out for client time, right? Or Mondays, like nothing happens regarding business because it's all home stuff, right? So I think that's really the first step, is like becoming aware of those patterns and seeing that, and then starting to be proactive and putting those time blocks in.
Yeah. So can I share with you what I did? Because it was really helpful for me when I was like creating my very first one. I printed out a paper calendar first, right? Before I digitized it. And first I put in all of my recurring appointments. Like I put those in first. Like I know I have networking on this day. I know I have, like at the time, the very first time I did this, I knew I had to pick my son up at 4:15 every day, right? I called them my non-negotiables. They were already like things that I knew I already had. And I put those in first.
Yep.
And then I put in like income producing activities. How many times a week did I want to do that and when? And I listed what those activities were. And I put in admin time and connect time, like consults and whatever. And I kind of built my calendar in categories, which it kind of seems like you've done similar things as well.
Yeah.
And I color coded my income producing activities are green for money. So I love that you color code them like by personal and business, because that's a different concept than what I use. But I love being able to, I think it's so important to show people that there's more than one way to do it. And you just got to figure out what works for you and do the thing. It doesn't matter if you do it like anyone else, just do what works for you. But here's a couple of ideas that you could try and see which one works for you, you know,
and then stick with it. That's the problem, is that you find something and you're like, oh, this kind of works. Like, I feel like I'm getting in a flow. And then so-and-so tells you to try something else. And someone else tells you to try something else. So you keep pulling these pieces in, but then you're not following through and you're not consistent because now you've added stuff that doesn't work. Right. So you've got to find what works for you and just be consistent. My weekly planning process, my end of day process, and like my monthly planning process, it's like freaking clockwork. It is exactly the same every single time. And I'm consistent with it. And someone's like, oh, have you thought about planning like this? I'm like, nope. Like, you've got to have this bubble around you of like, this works. I'm not changing it until it doesn't work. Yeah. And you just got to go all in and be consistent, because even like with systems, right? Like that's what I do. I tell people, I'm like, the system isn't the magic. Like the tool is not the magic that's going to make it work. It's you putting the stuff in it, you being consistent, you using it on a consistent basis. And it's the same thing with your calendar. If you are not taking control of these calendar spots, they'll fill up. People will book with you. And then you still have to do all the things you didn't block out.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And the other thing I learned is that as much as I want to be a paper planner person, I'm not. I try. So I even designed my own planner.
Yep.
And it's half filled out. Every single one of them is halfway filled out because my brain does not, like, I want to be so bad, but it is not who I am. And so, I have spent a lot of freaking money trying to be like everybody else and use a paper planner. And my brain just says, no, that's not how we do things here. And, so like figure out what works for you and don't do what everybody else is doing because you think it's going to be the magic solution. You still have to figure out, what does your brain, how does every brain is different. Like my friend Samantha says, every brain is different and you just got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the biggest problem, is that people that, especially starting entrepreneurs, right? Like I get it. You're like taking in all this information and you're doing all the things and figuring it all out. But so many people will then teach, and I teach it in a way that like it does work across the board for a lot of people, but you still have to take pieces and parts of it and again, make it work for you, because if you're not a paper planner person and I'm teaching you that system, well, that's not going to work for you.
Right.
So you do have to find that thing, because if it's not going to work for you, you're not going to be consistent with it. And again, it's not the paper planner that's the magic. It's you doing the thing with the planner. And I think that people just, it was me too, right? Like I listened to all the things. I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. I'm going to use that. Oh, that looks really, and then I didn't do any of it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to create my own system now because I need it to work for me.
Yes. You gotta make it work for you. So this has been really, really fun. I love learning about new systems and seeing how other people do what they do. So thanks for coming to share all about it. Tell
Absolutely.
people where they can find you and a little bit more about, oh, there you go. Look at that.
There I am.
She's got a little thing all set up. And you tell everybody about your program that you have.
Yeah, for sure. So I hang out on Instagram the most out of these four, and I'm actually on TikTok now too.
Yay!
We didn't put that one up there. Our website is bcohq.co. Obviously, you can find out all the things there. And then we actually have a free community. It's on Mighty Networks instead of a Facebook group, and you can get to that with the productivitypodcommunity.co. But yeah, we have a program called Hustle to Flow, and I really created it for those business owners that are in that like 1 to 3 year mark that kind of are still worried about all of this like time management and systems and really getting things streamlined and figuring out the business side of things. I just saw a lot of entrepreneurs that are really, really good at what they do, and they keep getting stuck with being able to manage their calendar, their tasks, their clients, their leads. And it really can hold businesses back. So yeah, we created that, and you can find out information on our website and all that good stuff. But we're on a mission to help entrepreneurs work smarter, not harder, and get back to doing what they love instead of all the other crap in the back end.
All the other crap. Yes. You know, I love a good system. Awesome.
Yes.
Well,
thanks systems for hours.
I know, which is why I think I'm like, oh yes, we need to talk because we speak the same language. So
yes.
Thanks for coming to share with my peeps.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. I hope that it helps somebody see that there's a way that there's more than one way that they can do something to increase their productivity, get shit done. Cause you know, that's what I'm all about.
And it is okay to say no. That is probably my biggest takeaway. Yes. Start saying no to things and you'll have so much more white space.
Yes. My friend Mary says, I love you and no.
There you go. You're like, I love that idea, but no, that doesn't fit.
But no, yes. She's a boundaries coach. So totally like but she's always like, I love you and no. I'm like, that's like perfect. It. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you again so very much. We'll see you guys all later.